Welcome to the Dialogue by Wirepoints, connecting the dots between our economy, government, and people. And now your hosts, Ted Dabrowski and Mark Glennon.
Hello and welcome to the Dialogue by Wirepoints. This is Mark Glennon. I'm here with my partner, Ted Dabrowski. We have some great news for you today. Contrary to popular opinion, it turns out that money actually does grow on trees. I'd like you to bear with me and listen just for a second to part of a speech by John Yarmuth. He's an important person. He's a congressman from Kentucky, and he is the chairman of the House of Representatives Budget Committee. Here's what he had to say.
In this country, because we issue our own currency and because we borrow and spend in our own currency, we can pay for whatever we want to pay for. We just tell the Treasury to pay the bills, to write the checks when the bills come in. We are not like businesses, we are not like families, we are not like state governments, we are not like local governments. We don't have to balance our checkbook. We are like the banker in Monopoly. We create the money, we hand out the money, everybody else plays the game with it.
Now, interestingly, also his counterpart in the Senate is Bernie Sanders, an open socialist. He chairs the Senate Budget Committee, so he, of course, believes in pretty much the same thing. Now, in fairness, if you went on to listen to the rest of that speech, Yarmuth talks about modern monetary. That's what he believes in. It's the idea that you can print all the money you want, basically, at the federal level. We're not going to have a wonky conversation about modern monetary theory, but the only constraint on that money printing at the federal level, as he sees it, and as many in Washington now see it, is inflation. But in fact, they don't seem to be too concerned about that. A dollar from 18 months ago today is worth only 94 cents. And inflation has been worsening, as any consumer knows. What we are going to talk today about is the effect of that kind of attitude towards federal spending on states, particularly states like Illinois that are in bad shape. It's changing the entire structure of government. It's federalizing anything. It's displacing your control over state and local government. Ted, why don't you get us started with some of the things that have resulted from this attitude?
Yeah, I think the first thing I do want to do is address a little bit of what Yarmuth said. You know, my experience in finance, I was internationally, I was in Mexico for several years, for 6 years. I was in Poland for 9. And if there's one thing I learned is that just because you print your own currency doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. The reality is that many countries have blown themselves up by being arrogant about that ability to print their own currency. And so they tried to play all kinds of games by printing more than they ever could afford. And eventually they paid the price. So, each country does have a limit to what it can do when it prints its own money. You know, in the case of Mexico, when I was there, 1994, the country totally blew up. And, it's always the poor people who get hurt because the wealthy people figure out how to hedge themselves, protect themselves. But it's destructive when you have the inflation, devaluations, and things like that. So, we're the U.S. We don't think we'll ever blow up like that. But it doesn't mean that we can't have bad inflation that's pernicious and it hurts the poor and disadvantaged the most. So, it's something to really think about when our leaders can be so arrogant about monetary policy like that. And then, of course, it has many, many impacts.
So the effect, Ted, one of the effects is that the federal government has been just pouring money into states. $190 billion has come into Illinois alone. I think it's a total now of $8 trillion at the federal level. Some of that is borrowed money. It comes from the Treasury. Some of it has been created out of thin air by the Federal Reserve Bank. In the last 18 months or so, since the start of the pandemic, they have created about $4.2 trillion of Fed funny money, over $2 trillion just in the past 12 months. And when you dump that kind of money on a state, you displace the role of state and local governments. Ted, Illinois specifically, what have we seen happen here?
Well, this has been an interesting thing where we've got Governor Pritzker announcing all kinds of expenditures on a daily basis. He announced the other day he's got a 40 million workforce recovery program. Again, that's coming from federal money. He's got a 50 million for Rebuild Illinois Main Street and downtowns, more federal money. He's talking about more money for bonuses for eligible child care workers. And what it is that, COVID has allowed the federal government to spend, as Mark just mentioned, trillions and of course billions in certain states to fund all these programs that otherwise probably wouldn't exist. And what it does is it effectively takes away the control, as Mark said, of the local governments from controlling it. And so, as local residents, we can no longer look to our local governments to manage, to be smart about money. It's money flowing in from the federal government. And, if there's any problems, the local governments just shrug their shoulders and say, hey, it's the feds. They're telling us what to do and how to spend it. It totally takes away the accountability from local governments.
And so now, as we record this, there's another pending bill, falsely called the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill, being debated right now in Congress. President Biden, who supports this, and his colleagues in Congress knew who to come to for additional support on that. They had a conference call with reporters, with Governor Pritzker, of course, being wildly enthusiastic about another dose of federal money to allow him to kick the can on addressing Illinois' underlying structural problems and to fund what are almost daily announcements. Probably every other day we see an announcement and a news story. Governor Pritzker announces a new program for this or that. Well, it's all being paid for with federal money, almost all of it. So we really have the federal government effectively financing a big message, big part of Governor Pritzker's reelection campaign. Ted, some of those programs in Illinois have really just, as I say, displaced the role of the state. COVID has been used as a pretext for rewriting our federal system. It's entirely changed the relationship that state and local governments have with ordinary people. Is that an overstatement, Ted?
No, I don't think so. I think COVID opened up the door for the feds to bail out the states like the New Jerseys, the Connecticut's, the Illinois. These are states with the highest tax burdens, the biggest pension debts, the biggest outmigration of population. And, people were wondering how those states were ever going to get bailed out. COVID, of course, created such a blanket bailout that happened. But now you're mentioning the next round, and now it's becoming easier because they're calling this $3.5 trillion package the infrastructure package. And they basically, it's interesting the language they're using. I look at here, SEIU President Mary Kay Henry. She says, we think that caregiving is an essential American infrastructure. So, childcare is an infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, environmental infrastructure. It goes on, and that's how you get to $3.5 trillion. And so the way to make sure that the people at the top who want to put in their policies out of DC, just call it infrastructure, and that makes it work.
Yeah, Ted, it's not infrastructure, and it's also not $3.5 trillion, by the way. More realistic estimates have put it at $4.5 trillion. They've been playing games with this by putting expiration dates on this. But in fact, these programs are intended by the sponsors to be permanent programs. And it's not just to help people affected by COVID or the poor by any means. These programs like childcare, the childcare tax credit, paid vacation time, paid family leave rather, paid childcare, they reach up into the middle class. People earning $150,000, $200,000 a year, families earning that, will be entitled to significant credits on their tax returns because of this. It's really a step towards making even the middle class government dependence.
Well, we're seeing how it's playing out right now. And, if we could go back to pre-COVID, Illinois was in trouble. There were threats of a downgrade to junk. The numbers weren't working. Moody's was threatening to downgrade if we tried to kick the can on pensions again. So fiscal reality was coming. And for those of us who were trying to bring back some fiscal discipline in Illinois, you could argue we're getting close because the can kicks were running out of can kicks. But now, the news has entirely changed. And the Politico covered this earlier this week that Biden is parading in Illinois, sending all of his staff here. They love what we're doing in Illinois. It kind of mirrors what Biden wants to do, and that's we've what they claim we've addressed climate change. Right, we have this massive green energy bill that's it's a gargantuan bill in Illinois. You've got these mandates on critical race theory coming down. You've got all these child care initiatives. You've got these massive programs that Biden loves seeing being done in Illinois. And so right now, Biden and Pritzker are embracing themselves because it's a perfect win for Pritzker. He's getting bailed out of Illinois' problems. He's getting federal funding for all the things that he thinks are important. And Biden is watching Illinois do everything that Biden thinks is important in this country. And so, get out of the way, California, get out of the way, New York, here's Illinois. And that's how bad this has gotten. And it's all funded by trillions and trillions of dollars.
Yep. And they're actually holding up Illinois as a model for what progressivism should be. I mean, it's quite astonishing. I suppose if you think that this federal money flow can continue, that you could make a case for this, but it's not going to continue. And in any event, even if it did, it would entirely destroy our federal system. And it goes beyond spending programs, Ted. They've got a separate bill, of course, to essentially nationalize the state election process, which constitutionally, historically, has always been left to the domain of the states. There's really no end to this. Some people ask, you almost have to take it seriously. What more could they be doing to destroy the country in some manner that they could reasonably hope to get away with, that they aren't doing? I'm not saying that's their intention, although it is the intention of some of them. They really don't like America as it is and much of Western civilization. But, we have open borders, crime destroying our major cities, our economy being wrecked by this crazy federal spending, inflation running rampant, free speech under attack, censorship everywhere. It's just one thing after another. And of course, the fiasco in Afghanistan that has totally destroyed our international credibility. People are really wondering, and you see it on our comment section, what more could they be doing to wreck the country more quickly than they are?
Well, it's clearly they have a view of the world, and they want that world imposed on everybody. And the best way to impose it is always money is always a key to imposing behavior, imposing actions. And of course, if you federalize it, then you control all 50 states, and you can start to control some of the rogue states that aren't behaving, that aren't complying, that aren't lining up. And that's the big issue. And when you have this much money, and I think it starts with voting. I think voting is one of those principal it's one of the way we measure our freedom. And if you can start setting the mandates, there's a lot of people who don't believe that this massive mail-in ballots make sense. And yet this Freedom to Vote Act, as they're calling the new HR1, the petite HR1, right? They would make it a federal right to mail a ballot, no excuse needed. So, there's a lot of things in this new election law, if it were to pass, that, again, it's imposing a one-size-fits-all on what's been a wonderful 50-state, federalist system.
Yeah, I just saw yesterday that Federal Express is now requiring that you show a personal ID card to send anything by Federal Express. Well, Federal Express requires it, but if you want to vote, you shouldn't have to show an identification card. That's their viewpoint, and they call that voting rights. And as if we have any voting rights. Given the gerrymandering, which has been outrageous in Illinois. Pritzker just signed off on the new gerrymandered maps in violation of his campaign promise to reform them properly. But it effectively just disenfranchises the vote away from his political enemies. That's all it is. Democracy is not functioning. And by the way, most of what we're talking about is not being talked about in the press. This new pending bill is routinely called the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill. Never any mention of these other things that are in there. And the public just has no understanding of what's going on. There's some magic to the phrase, before you know it. It does, when the world changes so fast that you really can't get your arms around how rapidly it's changing. There's some cognitive dissonance there. The public, even if they were being told about it, would find it hard to believe. But the press is not telling them about it. And the political process certainly hasn't responded appropriately yet. But this is going to dawn on people at some point, and they're not going to like it.
Well, it's a little bit of that whole discussion of limited government, right? So when you start getting these bills that are, $3.5 trillion, it's even hard. The concept of $3.5 trillion is impossible to understand, and the numbers don't mean anything anymore. But certainly the amount of things that are put in these bills, and it doesn't matter if it's an Illinois bill or a California bill or a New Jersey bill, they all do the same thing. And at the federal level, they do it too, right? So if you talk about this $3.5 trillion, they call it an infrastructure deal. And who can be against infrastructure, right? That's a great federal program to build highways and all that. But they're including Medicaid funds, they're including child care funds. And if you look at it, most of the Green New Deal is in that $3.5 trillion budget. So it's easy, and it's easy to keep people in the dark because nobody's reading that stuff. And even if they try to, it's hard to understand. Nobody can really figure out what's going on anymore. And this is why you don't want a government that becomes so large that it starts imposing all kinds of behaviors, all kinds of spending, all kinds of restrictions, because it's got the power of the purse.
And climate like COVID is being used as a pretext really just for rewriting basic rules of society. We have this drastic new energy bill, which we'll write about soon as we can figure out all that's in it. We're still learning. People are only now discovering what's in this. I think it's nearly 1,000-page bill, but it's full of equity provisions. Started looking at the bill. The word equity appears 220 times, and there are all kinds of mandates on the private sector, completely distorting market mechanisms and everything else. People are going to pay a huge energy bill, a much higher energy bill. No one really knows how much higher, because it's displacing the market mechanism. Cheaper alternatives like natural gas are being pushed away. And it's the same thing with COVID. The bills that they're trying to get across are filled with all kinds of other social justice goals and equity goals, as they call them.
Well, you're hitting probably the last one we want to hit is policing. There's a lot of the equity, the defund the police, and all that's gone on throughout the country. Difficult times, as we know. But if Washington could have its choice, it would have, again, rules that policing has been forever a very local thing. Your policeman. It's a community process. But if Washington could get its way, it would turn this into, certainly parts of Washington would turn it into a public health type force, and spend the money that way, and probably greatly impact the policing we know today. And maybe some things make sense, like body cameras. But again, is that the kind of stuff we want the national government, pushing down on every local government? Every government's different. Every city's different, and different cities want different things. And so, it just doesn't make sense to one more time federalize the policing, because it's a one size fits all. And when they get it wrong at the federal level, it gets it wrong everywhere. That's just not the way we operate.
Yeah, and with the police, of course, their hands are already tied by a federal consent decree that guides what they can and can't do, which is clearly part of our problem. And we have empty streets in Chicago as a result. The joke is that even the criminals are afraid to go out now, fearing for their lives. But the bottom line source of this, Tez, is what we talked about initially, which is this notion that money grows on trees. I mean, that's literally what they believe, not literally, figuratively what they believe. And they're saying it openly. That will not hold up. If life were that simple, governments would have been doing it long ago. When they've tried it in the past, it has never worked. This is going to come to a very bad ending. And we'll be covering that as we go along. So for now, that's all we have at Wirepoints. Ted, you got anything to add?
I just say, it's hard to know which is the chicken and which is the egg. Do they want full control and they're using this printing to get it, or did they figure out that they can print money? Now they're going to try to take control. But it's one way or the other. It's the same thing.
Thank you. Join us next time from Wirepoints.